The choice to build a new home is an exciting, yet understanding the build out process can be extremely frustrating. Today, it's all about reducing those frustrations. Come along with us. I'm Robbie English, and I have the extremely fortunate experience to have Carrie Sietsema with me. How is everybody?
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm excited about today's topic.
Yeah, me too. Really
Really,
excited about new construction.
I do too. Many consumers are finding that building a home that no one else has lived in ever, it's quite appealing. But what happens next and how many home buyers don't understand the process of building a home can be very frustrating. When it comes to making an informed decision when choosing to build a home, you need to know what to expect, especially in the build process. So that's really what I kind of want to talk about today. And I know Carrie's excited about it. And we, in real estate, it's all about the home search process, right, Carrie?
Yeah, home search process is such a
Yeah. And establishing those financial objectives and price point decisions for a consumer is daunting, and trying to get them pre-approved and everything, and understanding what their price point is. And then you kind of really need to focus on what are your wants, your dreams, your wishes and hopes and have to haves, because that really is the determining factor whether somebody wants to go resale construction or new construction. And I sure do love me some new construction, but I understand that some people don't want to live through the build process.
yeah,
And
that's
not knowing what to understand or what comes next leaves a lot of people either just trusting or getting quite frustrated. So realtors can assist you with finding the right builders and the right communities to get you to the right home. But after you find the right plans, community, and builder to go through, you jump into that contract phase where you're putting all your hopes and your dreams into a formalized plan with a builder who can execute that plan. So once we've kind of gone through all of that, and you've got a plan, you've got a contract, you've picked out a lot, and you've picked out that style of the home, whether it's 3 bedrooms, 2 story, 1 story, 4 bedroom, it's got a grotto and a pool, or it doesn't have either, 2 car garage or three. All of those can be quite crazy decisions to make, right?
yeah, a lot of decisions and a lot of decisions to kind of make, in a short period of time and a lot of decisions that are going to affect you for the entire time that you live in that home. So, yeah, really important to know, kind of what to expect and what's going to happen and also to have a team working with you that can help you interpret a lot of, what you're seeing and what you're being asked to decide upon.
Absolutely. So it's going through all of that that it seems like all the hard work is. And then for some people, it becomes that waiting game of, okay, when is it going to be ready?
Right.
But if you like to visit your home that's under construction, or if you like to just get reports from your agent or whoever to keep you up to date with the build process, you really do have to understand those new home construction typical phases that you go through. And as we go through this, this will hopefully help people understand where they are in the build process, because that's one of those big challenges.
Right. Absolutely.
So the first typical phase that you go through in new construction is going to be on the lot design and home placement. And that really does come into having a huge effect on the overall style and aesthetic of the home. This is where they go through and they scrape and they grade the lot. They put up those forms and foundations and really hopefully treat the soil for pests. And they're going to do any initial plumbing work that they're going to need to do. If they have to put in all the septic or well work or even sewer work, that's all going to happen right there. And
Right.
then they will connect to the sewer, of course, later, and connect to the septic later. But that lot design and placement is where you're seeing some grading happening and, you see the forms go up and you start to get excited.
And so
But
depending on the location and the actual ground, the earth that's underneath that lot, different builders are going to allow that lot to kind of, I guess you would call it, settle for a certain amount of time. Is that right?
absolutely.
Okay. So it may, like, all of that grading may happen and then your lot may just kind of sit for a little while.
Yeah, and that's the whole aspect of really understanding, why they do what they do, and it's to protect a lot of the home from having structural damage or trying to mitigate some of that because in Texas, our land shifts a lot, right? And it's gonna depending on how far you are from any fault lines, that's also going to have a factor.
Right.
Allowing that land to cure, I've seen it quite a long period of time and, quite a short period of time. So it kind of all depends in there on how long it's going to take once they go through and they scrape and grade to
Mhm.
putting up those forms and foundation for the foundation. And then we have that where they establish the slab and go in and pour the foundation or the pier and beam footing, right? And they do the piers and
Mhm.
get it all ready to build. And in that step, they're doing the formalized plumbing lines and they're doing the foundation walls and jumping in and laying the footprint up for the home. And this is where it gets really exciting for people to be
Right.
able to see, okay, this is the garage, this is the guest bedroom,
Uh-huh.
this is the bathroom. And I think that that's a fun time to go see, whether it is writing your name on the concrete or, seeing it. And depending on how big the slab is, they may have to water it for a certain period of time while it's curing to keep it from cracking.
Yeah, that is always kind of a fun time to go and visit the build site because you can kind of walk around on the slab and say, this is going to be this room and kind of try to imagine it the way it's going to be. And that's kind of the first, solid piece of the house that you're actually getting to see and interact with.
Yeah,
Yeah, a super fun moment to go see that.
I think so as well. And you and I both agree with that. But what's the next phase, Carrie, that happens after the foundation?
So this one's super fun too. Love this phase. That's gonna be the framing phase. Start putting up that frame, getting that house actually starting to become a house. So the framing obviously has to be done before the insulation can go in. That's when you're gonna start to see the doors, you're gonna start to see the windows. A lot of the mechanicals are going to start to be built in during that time. This is also when they're going to deliver any bathtubs that you have because it's a lot easier to maneuver a bathtub through partially framed house than it is to put all the frames and the drywall up and then try to get that bathtub in there. The sun floors are going to go in at that same time. You're also going to see the roof start to be formed as far as the roofing trusses and the roofing framing goes. And then once all that framing's done, you're going to come to an inspection of that framing, which is a really, really important inspection point.
Yeah, and they have to do that, framing inspection before they can start installing, like, the HVAC or any kind of big systems that are gonna have to go through a roof or anything
Mhm.
like that, because some of those mechanicals are rather big.
Yeah.
And Carrie and I have had the fortunate experience to see and to be invited, but also to see the aftermath of homeowners who are building these houses, and they have home blessing parties or different, put good energy and juju. It depends on what you believe and how you think and how you structure this. But we've seen some people that come in and write Bible verses on the wood through the home to fill it with love.
Mhm.
And we've seen that where others have brought their friends in with Sharpies to write positive messages throughout the home to kinda have that establishment because, it's all that, building a foundation on stone and having that just with that love within the walls of the home. And it's really a cool situation to go through and read, and then if you don't know the handwriting, to try and figure out who wrote it is even more fun. So if you're going to do something like that, do some color coding with those Sharpie markers, to really kind of do it. And it doesn't have to be based in any belief system. It could be just, this is going to be a place of love and, you can do it any way you want to, but it's been very cool to see that and to, go through and search for those little messages.
That has been cool to see that and see all the well wishes, written there right there on the framing of the house that are gonna be there forever. Super
Yeah.
cool.
And it's just something just something extra, I think that,
Wow.
fill it with, and I've seen different people write messages to the home that they're going to live in on those.
Oh, cool.
So
Huh.
that's really cool. But after we go through the framing, which is going to be where you're really going to see your house take shape, right? They're going to do insulation, right? And they're going to jump in and start to insulate the home. Carrie, you want to walk us through the whole insulation portion?
Yeah. So the insulation that you choose is going to have an R value rating system, which measures how well that insulation can prevent the flow of heat into and out of the home. So R values are going to tell you how well the insulation is working. The values, of course, are going to vary upon the type of insulation, thickness of the insulation, and the density of the insulation material. Tons of different options out there for insulation. And of course, a higher R value, I should mention, means greater performance, and that's going to most likely lead to more energy savings for the homeowner down the line. Some of the types of insulation are going to be you can do loose fill, you can do bats and blankets, you can do a rigid board type insulation, you can do reflective insulation. You can even do a plastic spray foam, or you can do a combination of those. It just kind of depends. A lot of builders will let you choose your insulation when you're setting up the build. So it's important to kind of know what kind you want, learn about the different kinds of insulation, and make the decision that's going to work best for you.
Absolutely. Do you have a favorite type of insulation to be used, especially like on the exterior walls?
I kind of like the plastic spray foam.
I like the spray foam as well. And I
Yeah.
think that for some reason, I don't like animals running through any kind of wall situation. And I understand that that takes more planning in the initial aspects because, it's going to give a little bit more insulation, but it's also going to really limit what you could do with those walls, because you're going to have to dig through that insulation to put a cable through if you're running it from a TV down to the floor or baseline. But
That
I
actually, I'm going to interrupt you. That actually kind of brings us back to an important point that I don't think we should go past here, and that is to have have someone, whether it be your agent or yourself, going through the house from time to time and from phase to phase, taking pictures and comparing what's happening with the plans that you actually have for the house, just to make sure that like the switches and mechanicals and stuff are going in the place that you expect them to. I know this
yeah,
is something that you always advise your clients to do and that you do for your clients a lot of the time, and that I do for my clients as well. Because, like you said, once that spray foam goes in, it can be hard to go back and like change where the wiring is going. So it's really good to catch those things at an early phase so that they're not, spray foamed over or whatever that makes it more difficult to fix something that's gone wrong because builders are human and they can make mistakes.
absolutely. And it also makes great documentation for later, especially if you decide to, I don't want this wall anymore between this area and this area, or I want to, cut some of this out. People change things, especially where it comes to access to dining rooms or bedrooms or different alignment and moving of TV. Some people are going to need and they're going to change the orientation. So they're going to need a box and a place to run those wires and cables. So it does matter, and especially when it comes to walls that share a lot of the water, the
Mhm.
plumbing, water, and stuff like that. It could be on the other side of a kitchen, and you certainly don't want to drill through one of those plastic, or rubber wires for water and just have a big old mess.
Right, right. Good point.
I don't. I mean, I like to mitigate all those risks as
Yeah.
possible. But after we go through and we start doing the wonderful aspects of the insulation, and they can leave you with a lot of choices, and the reflective and That's a lot on the roof line in there. And, it's important to make your house have some breathability, but also to be able to protect it from those Texas summers and those harsh winters, which, we just experienced a couple of years ago. But, the better the insulation, it's going to help with keeping your areas cooler or warmer, depending on the season, and may not put as much wear and tear or requirement on your mechanicals, such as your HVAC.
Right.
So insulation and then the windows you choose are going to be to, and let me take that back. The windows and doors that you choose are also going to be key to having a home that is maybe a little bit more energy efficient. But the next section after the insulation is going to become dealing with the exterior. This is where the masonry is going to be installed, or the siding, or whatever it is you're doing on the outside of the home. You're going to see the doors and the decks really start coming into play. And we're going to, the installation to start keeping the house from the outside moisture and outside elements. But you're going to see the driveways and patios being poured. Now, it's important to know that even though typically during this phase you do see driveways poured, a lot of builders are waiting for the driveways to be poured till later in the process to keep people off of the driveways. We used to see them with sawhorses at the very beginning. And then those sawhorses would get moved and people would pull up onto those driveways and then they would get damaged or a lot of wear and tear. So the driveway is one of those indicators. And when it looks new, the house is a little bit newer, and then, but you get all those construction vehicles on there and visitors on the weekends that are kind of walking through neighborhoods and stuff. It can put some wear and tear on those driveways. So a lot of builders are waiting to pour the driveways till closer to the finish out of the entire house. But only after the structure is weatherproofed, we see the installation of the drywall. And all of these sections of the build depend upon separate subcontractor crews that are going to come in and specialize and work on the different aspects of the house. So you will not see typically the same set of contractors doing the framing and doing the drywall. You may if they have cross skills, but typically you won't. But that drywall and mudding and the installation is where it's going to be nailed into the framing, and then they're gonna go through and they're gonna tape and float and use that wonderful mud to make it look, a little pretty, right? No
Right.
flaws is the goal. So that it's going to be a gorgeous wall so that you can have it painted the color you want and it's going to show off that artwork or not look like it's been cut into. During the drywall, it's important to verify that the individuals that are installing the drywall are cutting around the plugs sufficiently. They aren't drywalling over a window and forgetting that. And I've seen that before where you have a window on the outside and then you go on the inside of the house and you're like, there's no window here. What the heck? And then that's where they've accidentally drywalled over something. But not losing something under the drywall and having to guess where it is and cut in is where a lot of the damage comes in. And sometimes people are really good at covering those, but not all the time. It's all going to depend on the texture that's being used on those walls. And if you're going with a flat and no spray texture on there, or if you're going with some different style of texture, it may be able to hide some of those flaws and it may not be able to. And I know there's a lot of people that like those smooth walls.
Yes, I love those smooth walls.
I figured that was one that
Yeah.
you were gonna be one of those people.
Yeah.
It makes sense for a lot of people. But really working on that exterior and getting that masonry done to allow for some of the things that don't need to be out on all the elements is really gonna happen. You're gonna see the garage doors not gonna be installed till later, but the garage will be, drywall. But it's going to make sure that, the roof has already been done through the exterior section, and we're gonna protect all of this from getting wet because when drywall gets wet, it's not a good thing.
No, not a good thing at
at
all.
all. So after you start working on the drywall section, then we typically see the plumbing and mechanicals and trim going in. And Carrie, will you walk us through the mechanical and the plumbing section as well as some of the trim?
I would love to. This is one of my favorite steps. Well, maybe they all are, but this one I like especially. So this one is when your cabinetry is going to go in, your tile is going to go in, and your counters are going to be installed. So if you chose those beautiful granite countertops, you get to finally see those, come into reality. The plumbing fixtures are going to be attached. The electrical items are going to be installed. So plugs, switches, whatever cool chandeliers you've chosen, or maybe recessed lighting. The appliances and the mechanicals are going to be installed. So that's going to be obviously your dishwasher, whatever kind of stove, cooktop combination you've chosen. You're going to see your baseboards and your flooring go in. And then finally, you're gonna see painting, and if you've chosen wallpaper, you're gonna see that wallpaper go in. This is when your house is starting to look, less like a construction site and a little bit more like your home that you've chosen and designed.
Yeah, and really coming through with the design choices that you've chosen will really make this house start to feel home. And when you've kind of one of the steps in, after you select a contract, you're going to typically go through on a production build, you're going to go through a design meeting. And they're typically 4 hours, and you're going to have chosen all of the design aesthetics that you're gonna want. You're gonna have chosen the brick that was done during the exterior. You're gonna choose the levels of the cabinetry, and you are going to see a lot of the cabinets and, appliances that you've chosen now start to be delivered and come in, and that is really a time that I get excited as well, and you see all the interior doors being hung and,
Mhm.
after the floor and everything, and then you kinda it makes your heart hurt just for a second if something gets scuffed or nicked and stuff like that. But it is really where a lot of individuals who are building a home get the most excitement. And one of the things that I would be remiss if I didn't remind you is all during the construction phase, you have to curb your spending. You don't want to take on any kind of debt for the house before you have the house because a lot of people, depending on the builder and depending on the type of construction, it can go anywhere from, 4 to 6 weeks to 6 to 8 months and even a year and a half or longer. So it's really hard because you want to go and you get excited and you start filling a room with everything that you've bought for the house. That's really not what you need to be doing because your financing is still going to come in and have to be finalized after the home is close to being finished. And I think that, we would be remiss if we didn't kinda remind everybody, "Hey, this plumbing, mechanical, and trim is exciting," and this is even when some people wanna start shopping, and they're like, "Yeah, but now I wanna put this great ice maker over here and, just take out that little cabinet section and, change because those creative wheels start moving, but this is one of the most exciting times for, home owner to kinda come through and start seeing their house take into final shape.
Yeah, definitely a fun time. And I guess, we should probably talk about that actual design appointment that you just mentioned, Robbie. As far as design choices, it's a really good idea to take your agent with you to your design appointment. Because as you're choosing whether you want to get upgraded finishes or basic finishes or, ceiling fans in rooms or various upgraded fixtures or options, you really want to do a very careful analysis of what you would pay the builder to put those in versus how much that might actually add to the resale price of the house down the line. And you also want to analyze what you're paying the builder to put those in versus what you can pay another contractor after the house is built to put them in. Because one thing to know is builders are going to give you a lot of choices and they're going to give you a lot of different upgrades, which is great. And a lot of those are really good choices to make. However, especially with things like light fixtures, and it can even extend to like flooring and paint, you're going to have a lot more options if you choose to change it after the build is done. And a lot of times, the price to change it out after the build is done is going to be comparable or even sometimes less than having the builder do the upgrade option that you may not even like as much as something that you can go and get at the hardware store and have your local electrician install.
Absolutely, because, having the builder put in the wiring or the spots for different sconces or different light fixtures, and then not actually having them install is or doing the base installation with, just those contracting lights that would go up there, or, they're dome style, or, there's a bunch of different names for them. And I have my own personal names for those, but I'm not going to say it. But at the same time, a lot of people don't understand that a lot of the stores out there, there's a lot of lighting stores out there. You can get good deals at lighting stores. They're not necessarily going to be more expensive than a Home Depot or a Lowe's or
Mhm.
the Ace Hardwares that, have different things. But I traditionally find more options and more up to date selections on things that I find at big box home improvement stores or lighting stores or fan stores than I see that are available through builders.
Right.
And it really depends on where you are in the design fad that we're in. Are we in the beginning of it, or what's going on really in that time period?
Yeah. Good point. Really good point.
But we do need to take into consideration what we are spending on the property
Mhm.
and what we have to have and what we don't have to have. Because sometimes the options that the builder provide are good enough for us. Sometimes they're not. And sometimes the charges, because a lot of them give you an allotment. And then it always, when you go to that design appointment, it's the design consultant's job who works for the builder to upsell you, right?
Well,
To say, "Oh, but this is level 3. This is really what you want," when maybe that's not what you should be doing.
yeah. Very good
So,
point.
yeah, taking time to personalize it. I mean, even after you build a custom home, it may be 90% there. And then you really have to live in the space long enough to know where your furniture goes and say, wait, I need a painter because I needed an accent wall here and a
Right.
different thing. So it does happen. I actually had some new construction clients years ago that we went through searching for new build after new build for the furniture placement
Mhm.
because their furniture was so huge and the things they wanted to do in the room. It was we weren't able to modify some of the builds and some of the plans. And then, during the build process, current home burned. So they lost all that
Mhm.
furniture that we had to take into consideration for so long. So that was a little frustrating too. And then they had abnormally long walls and stuff like that to fit furniture they didn't have anymore. So
Right.
you always have to be ready for plan B, But after we get through, the finish outs, and we're looking at a lot of the design choices that are coming into perfect vision here with the plumbing and mechanical and trim set time period. Then we go into the next phase, which is looking at the finish out and the buyer approvals. And when we really jump into some of those buyer approvals, this is going to include your final couple of walks. And this is where hopefully your realtor's going to go with you. And I always like to pick a different color tape, but you're going to do those blue tape visits. And sometimes that house is going to look like it had measles on it, because when you have construction crew going through and they're looking, they miss things. And that's
Well,
one of the things that we have to be. Yes, it's their job, but they are human, right? And
right.
you miss things, and when you're looking through the home that's gonna be yours with a more critical eye, you're gonna catch some of those flaws. And this is going to be the time where the builder's gonna do those final corrections and, fix the things, and you want to be present through the entire process. But it is helpful to know what's going on, because some of those final builder corrections that they're gonna have to make, if it's been a big thing, you may have to live with it. If it's the direction of the staircase, or the placement or the finish out of the fireplace and you haven't been present, or wait, hold on, it was supposed to have a hearth and it doesn't, or the mantle is gone and now it can't be put up. You needed to catch those early on. And that's one of the things that I pride myself on trying to be present for, as well as my agents, to make sure that they understand that, hey, we got advanced network wiring through the house and making sure that everything is where it needs to be. But this is where those builders also bring in and have people do the final cleanings. And the home buyer who has been going through this entire build process is scheduled with a home orientation to understand where are the cutoffs, where are the different things like that. But this is also when that appraiser's coming out, if you've gotten financing, to make and select what that house is going to appraise for.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super important stuff. And then of course you're gonna wanna have your final inspection as well, which hopefully is going to be in addition to your phase inspections. If you
Yeah,
have
let's
but
dive into that. Let's
okay.
dive into that because it's very important what you're talking about. So, can you tell everybody what the difference is between a final inspection and phase inspections? Because I think consumers in general think that only builders are enabled to have final or to have phase inspections based upon what the requirements are in the city or county that they're building a home.
Yeah, as a buyer of a new build, it's really important that you have a third party inspector, an inspector that works for you, come out and do inspections during various phases of your new build. Not only are you going to have your realtor's eyes on it, walking through, taking pictures for you, checking up on the process, but at certain phases, you want that licensed inspector to come out and do just a really thorough inspection. For instance, once you get the framing up, you want an inspector to come out and do a framing inspection. Because when the frame is up, obviously that's pretty early on in the build process, and that frame is going to get covered. And so if you don't have phase inspections and you only choose to have that final inspection done, there's a lot that can be going on with, say, the frame of the house that final inspector isn't going to be able to access. Is it going to be able to see? And is it going to be able to inspect? And even if you did find something wrong, it's going to be extremely difficult for the builder to go back at that phase and fix something that's in the framing of the house. So that's why it is so critical for you to hire your own inspector to come out and inspect those phases.
Yeah, they're not putting your house up on a surgical table and doing a colonoscopy on the house. So they're not going to be able to stick a camera up there and see every different thing of what's going on and things that need to be fixed. We needed to have done that during the phases of construction.
Right.
And again, if at all, you're at least going to have at the very least, an independent third party inspection. You need to do that at the very minimum, but really having inspections throughout the process would be the best scenario. And you may get some pushback from some builders about that, but it's just to protect you that you need to look at different levels of inspection.
And keep in mind that the builder is going to have people come out and do their own inspections. The city at certain points is going to have inspectors come out. None of those things are a substitute for you hiring your own third party inspector to come out and do an inspection for you.
Yeah, and the builder shouldn't have anything to hide or have anything to be worried about as long as they're building the house to the way that it's supposed to be built. Should
Uh,
all be fine. But it's when things get forgot or missed or misplaced or wiring should be here and it's not here or this plug doesn't work. It's great to have just extra eyes to make sure they're catching all of that.
yeah.
The next phase after, the typical, looking at the finish outs and the buyer approvals is it's probably going to be happening at the same time, but it's the fencing and landscaping. And many times this is one of the last phases that happens, and you're going to see those sprinkler systems going in if that's what you've chosen to add. You're going to see that a lot of the final grading is going to happen of the lot to make sure it's smooth and everything like that. You're going to see the trash being picked up, and you're going to see a lot of things left behind too. And it happens. And I like to encourage everybody to go to Home Depot and rent one of those rolling magnets, especially if it's your house, and just take some time and go over the yard and get some of those loose nails up. in metal pieces of trash that it's going to be down in the dirt. If you decide to dig in it later, I'd feel much more at peace knowing that I'm digging through or trying to plant some plants. I'm not going to find a bunch of nails and stuff in there because metal doesn't, just break down like in a compost pile, in case you didn't know. Right? So just through there, and a lot of builders should be doing that, and they aren't. But whether it is a staple, a screw, a nail, or a piece of metal that's been flashing, that's been cut off from the roof, that all gets covered and just be a fun thing that you could go do on a day if you wanted to, if this is your house. But it needs to happen before the grading and maybe after the grading, well before they start putting down grass, planting trees,
Mhm.
and doing your plants and stuff like that. But you'll see this all happen about the same time. And depending on what your choices are on the trees and, what's going on in the subdivision that you're building in, you're going to see different styles of plants and going in. And then after that happens, you will see the final inspections and certificate of occupancy to, really that phase come into play. And Carrie, jump us through the final inspections and certificate of occupancy. And first of all, tell us what the certificate of occupancy is and what the importance and significance is of it.
Oh my gosh. So at this phase, you are, you're in the home stretch. You are almost into your new home. Super exciting. The certificate of occupancy is something that gets issued by the government that says it's okay for somebody to live in the house. And the certificate of occupancy is super important because until you have a certificate of occupancy issued, you can't get your appraisal and you can't have the utilities turned on. So we use this phase. The city's going to come out. They're going to do their final inspection. Everything looks okay to them. They're going to issue that certificate of occupancy. And then you can turn on your utilities, and then the appraiser can come out to finalize the value of your home. So your loan can be finalized.
Absolutely. And just FYI, you can't stay in that without a certificate of occupancy.
Right.
So don't get crazy over there and think, oh, well, no big deal. We'll get that later. No, I don't think so. But that really does jump in and round out a lot of the things that come through. And of course, you've got to go through the phase of closing, and hopefully that the builder's been able to rectify everything that's happened and fix any kind of issues as well. And I think that the closing steps are the most exciting because you're jumping in and getting ready to move into that home. And, but you've got to wait. Don't go shopping until you've gone through closing. Don't schedule and try to say, oh, well, I bought the stuff, but I haven't taken delivery. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
It's still on your credit.
Well,
So make sure that credit stays clear. And then after you close, go schedule everything to be delivered that you want to get. And, understand people get excited and they want to have a new house. They want some new furniture and or some new appliances, washer and dryer and stuff. But
new artwork for the wall.
yes, you would be one who would focus on the artwork because I have seen some of the artwork choices that you like in some of the stores we visited. So yeah, that's all especially exciting time. But even just having the stuff to play around in the yard and you get excited and say, oh, well, I've got to mow my yard, so I've got to have a new lawnmower. You're going to have to wait.
Yeah.
But it is an exciting time and it's a great time for a lot of people when they want to jump in and can't find what they want resale to make that choice.
Yeah, so much fun to go through the process of, designing a new home, choosing that community, looking at all the floor plans.